Spencer Easton, welcome to the Preconstruction podcast.
All right, I'm excited.
I can't stand up till we see this T-shirt. You can just about. You're just yes. Now we're talking. Love it. Oakland Construction, here we come. So, if
All right.
for anybody that doesn't know you, Spencer, give us a quick 30-second bio.
So, Spencer Easton, been in the construction industry for about 17 years. Started when I was still in high school, but even before that, grew up. My dad's in construction. His dad built and manufactured rifles for World War II. So building and that type of thing runs in my family. And I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life because I didn't want to work as a laborer. That's where I started. And I was like, screw this. I want to go back to school. So I went to college and was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. Went for construction management. During that time, I had a myriad of jobs, everything ranging from being a private investigator to working at a facility for troubled youth, like everything under the sun. I've done a little bit of everything. And during that time of going to school and figuring out, I want to go to, I've done construction, let's do construction management. I started working at a crane company. The Mountain Crane, they have, or they had when I left there, about 180 mobile cranes.
Wow.
And I ultimately became kind of the head of logistics and dispatch and operations at that crane company, making sure that every single piece of equipment could be working as much as we could get work for it, right?
Brilliant.
And, assigning hundreds of crane operators, truck drivers, riggers, various jobs across the country and getting them from point A to point B and making sure they had all the right equipment, rigging, counterweight, so on and so forth, so Brilliant. That they could do their job.
And then through college, I'm always intrigued about education, right? And construction management degrees, because it's not all the same. What they teach is all different in each course in each university. What was it like, the construction management degree? And during the degree, were you always leaning towards scheduling, logistics, pre-construction, or was it just kind of right place, right time?
No, I remember when I took the one scheduling class that was required for the degree at Weber State. I remember thinking to myself, I'm never going to use this, so I don't.
just get through it. And I think everyone's the same. Estimating pre-construction is the same. Let's get through the 10% that we need to, and let's get to the sexy stuff.
Yeah. And it's funny because when I graduated and I started looking for a job more correlated with, and that's what happened. I was working at Mountain Crane and working between 80 and 100-hour work weeks average.
Wow.
And on the brink of divorce and just in a horrible place, not good. So that's what kind of led me to look for other employment. And that's what led me to Oakland. I just networked and had known some people, and that's how I ended up at Oakland.
Good.
And when I got there, because of my time at the crane company with scheduling cranes, it's not the same as critical path management type scheduling is what we do in construction. But the HR lady said, I know you applied for these other positions that everyone goes for, the project engineer, the field engineer, those types of things. I even said, I was like project engineer, field engineer, or like estimating or something like that. Like the three main courses of
anything that doesn't require 100 hours a week.
Yeah. I don't care. I feel like I could do any of them. Let's have at it, right? So that's kind of how I ended up in scheduling, because the HR gal was like, well, I feel like you might have a good intro into scheduling. And I was like, that's a career path. I thought that was just something that the project manager and the superintendent did, like the team did. That's a tool that they use. It's like, oh no, it's a whole specialized field. Like, interesting. Tell me more. So, well, here we are.
Shout out to the HR. Let's have her name. Fair play there. That's what I'm talking. That's real HR there. Interviewed someone a couple of times and just feeling it, seeing it, and going, right, this is where you fit in the bus.
Yep. And she did it was a good call. I've really enjoyed it. And that's been 5 years now, and here we are.
Now, I know you're saying it's slightly different, logistics manager for cranes all over the country, but in theory, it's obviously more complex, but in theory, it's quite similar. Going in there without any scheduling experience, I would imagine you hadn't got any P6 experience or any knowledge. Nope. How difficult was it? I mean, you're obviously coming off a job that basically nearly divorced you, nearly ran you out of the industry. Was it like great excitement, this fresh opportunity, fresh approach?
Absolutely, yeah. And yeah, you're spot on. I'd never been in P6 before. Even like the course that I took in college, it was all about Microsoft Project. Right. And honestly, once you use Microsoft Project and then you upgrade to P6 or a more robust CPM tool, you see really quickly that there's a very big difference between the two.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And it's like night and day. I don't think Microsoft Project really is a CPM tool. To me, it's more of a bar charting tool. Yeah. It doesn't really do it the same way, so it's hard to compare them. There's other tools like Asta or Phoenix or like 100 others that more correlate with what P6 really does. Yeah. So yeah, and when I started at Oakland, there was four of us, 4 schedulers, and one guy quit, another guy retired, and it quickly became 2 of us for around $800 million in revenue. There was about 40 projects at the time, something like that. Yeah. And I quickly became, within 6 months, I had about a third of all the projects at Oakland Construction. And I had never really done vertical construction either, right? My experience was in industrial and more like flat work. Yeah. And it's completely different. I never dealt really a lot with like skin systems, like facade and stuff like that.
But Spencer, I mean that essentially is the best way to learn, because we get a lot of people. I get a lot of APMs, project engineers, graduates coming to me and saying, "Listen, I'm open to anything. This is my skill set. This is my strengths. This is what I thought that I liked during my construction management degree." But again, this is all about pre-construction scheduling as a part of that. Talk to me about the people. What advice would you give, and how would you kind of almost describe scheduling on a low level? So layman's terms, if someone's coming out a graduate now thinking, you know what, I think I would like scheduling. What is it? What is the basic idea of scheduling within a large, huge construction management firm?
It's how and when do we do what we do? Yeah. And really that it's the thing that if you get it, you're going to go far in your career. Yeah. Now, I'm not saying as a scheduler, as a project manager, if you want to understand construction, you have to understand schedule. If you want, and all of the people that are director level, that are executive level, it's all clicked and they've got it. Yeah. And that there seems to be kind of this invisible wall that people hit. Yeah. If they can't get it, if they don't take the time, they're like, schedule. Yeah, it's important. There's this plan that we need to put together, and then we'll track to it and just go with the motions and not really dive in and ask why on schedule. Yeah. You'll hit this invisible wall that I see a lot of people hit. Yeah. Superintendents hit it. We call them the superintendent 2 wall. At
Yeah.
Oakland, at superintendent 2, you have to understand schedule. A lot of people don't get past that,
Right.
and they never really learn how to manage it properly, and they just kind of stick around that same level, and then they're stuck.
Yeah.
So the the problem with our industry, though, is that CPM hides a lot of stuff.
Okay.
And so it becomes really hard to understand the one thing that predicates everything else. And what I mean by that is safety is predicated on how fast and what we're going to do as far as schedule and the plan. And so is quality. If we have sufficient time, trade partners can, subcontractors, whoever needs to come and perform these tasks can do it.
Yeah.
Same thing with cost. Whatever we do time-wise, it equals cost. So time really comes first. It's the first thing to manage, and then everything else comes after. The most important is safety. We can't do things unsafely. That's irresponsible. So safety comes first as far as priority, but as far as order, schedule comes first. Schedule and then everything else follows. But in our industry, it's almost opposite. We are really good at modeling cost.
Yeah.
And modeling time, you can come through and put a plan together, but then the management of it and seeing flow and how do we achieve flow on a project, that's the big differentiator between, a good project manager or team and an excellent project manager or team.
Yeah, because you talk about flow quite a lot. Any of the kind of speaking events that you've been to, any of your stuff on LinkedIn, I've been listening to a lot, and flow is the go-to word, and it's the most important word in everything you talk about within a schedule. Let's start at the beginning of the process. We're talking about pre-design, working with the architects, working with the owners, value engineering. Scheduling gets involved. How close does scheduling work with the cost team, the cost management team, the pre-construction team, the estimators, and how does that dynamic work? Do you advise them? Do they take the lead? Do you take the lead? Does the client take the lead? Does the architect take the lead? Or is it just a collaborative approach that you see, and it has to be the way forward?
I think the collaborative approach is the proper way to do it. And I mean, we're talking about at my level, I get involved with like most all projects. So you see everything from this project over here, which has, a designer who's really taken the lead, and we're just kind of, okay, there's obviously a leader in this group. Let's follow this. Others where it's like dictating and it's not really the best dynamic, but we're getting through it type thing. And then you have others that are more collaborative IPD like projects where, there's a lot of weighing and buy-in from multiple, stakeholders. The owner obviously kind of dictates what that value is, and we all work together to eliminate, the non-value of, different steps or whatever that we wouldn't need to do to make sure that we're providing what the owner really wants. Yeah. So schedule is like the first thing you do, right? When you are just trying to get a job too, like proposal, like that's one of the main things that you hear from all these different RFPs or proposal requests. They want to know, well, how would you build this thing? And that's time, right? How would you sequence it? How would you get that flow, right? Yeah. And anyone that's actually been out, not just in the field, but like managing from, even a project manager standpoint, it's almost a feeling that the job site gets when everything just starts clicking and it goes, from one thing to the next, and there's no holdups. That's that flow. And when stuff slows down, and then when you get over that issue and it speeds back up, you feel, I used to call it whiplash, right? Where it like slows down and speeds back up and so on and so forth. And there's lots of studies on actually tracking production, and they call them lines of balance, right? Where you might have, over time, you might have a trade partner or someone installing their amount of work, and the subsequent trade in the sequence, could come in and go faster, and, it's in less time. So those variations of production rate, the idea is when you get flow is they're all going at the same rate, right? So that they all have the similar, line of balance. And when you don't, one goes slower, it would slow down everyone behind it. And the idea behind our approach is understanding what those lines of balance are and leveling them beforehand so that we model what needs to happen properly, so that when we get out to the project, we're not pushing faster than what needs to happen. And we achieve that flow and keep it as long as physically possible.
Yeah. And I can imagine you coming in as well from the outset, as you say, going from 4 schedulers to 2 schedulers straight into the deep end. Did you quickly understand the importance of flow and the importance of scheduling within a project? Or was that already ingrained or inherited within Oakland? Or was it something that you had to sell internally or sell to the executive VPs or the C-suites?
It wasn't intuitive, but I found out really quick a few things. I felt that there were times when we were doing good, like everything was just working, and then there were problems. And so we had to go figure out what that really meant. And we started looking into lean construction and all these other avenues of like, what is there a better way, right? So as you go searching, other people are finding answers and stuff like that, and sharing and collaborating. So we learned a lot from the lean community. But the thing that struck me the hardest or the deepest is when I started, I would go out on a project site, and you would hear from trade partners or from the project team, oh, no one really, your schedule, it's baloney. No one reads it. It's not real. And it's like, it was really disheartening, because like I would spend, my time doing this. I'm like, I don't know. I feel like I'm doing what you're telling me. Like, what's not right about it? And I kept like asking this, and there was this sentiment that P6 and this schedule that I was putting out, no matter what I was doing, is always wrong. And I kept asking why. And it came down to the point where it's like, well, it's not tracking enough detail to really show what's actually happening. We were too high level. And when I started driving down and said, okay, let's start putting in all that detail, the time to manage it like went exponential. And so I was like, oh, I now see why we don't do this. I can't keep up with the amount of work I have on my plate, which was like 20 different projects at the time, all over like at least 20 million. Yeah. So I think I had like $400 million worth of work 6 months in. And, having that much work and saying, okay, I want to go down to, a production level detail of schedule. You have to be on site like almost all the time to manage that, even on a smaller project. It's just too much moving parts and pieces that every day, hey, in this room, the fire sprink needs to go beneath the duct, because that's how that's how we modeled it. It needed to come down under for this various reason. We modeled it that way in BIM or whatever. But in this other room that needs to go first, it's like, well, decoupling that in P6, changing things around, and then linking everything back together just for that one room, but it's not really for everything else. So you have to break it into different WBS. Like you just start going down this like this hole that it's just crazy to manage and actually like model that in P6. And it is achievable. They do it in oil and gas.
That's right.
When they do these shutdowns at refineries, we've hired a lot of folks on from the oil and gas industry, and they come in, they're like, commercial, you guys do not know what you're doing. Yeah. And so when we say, well, it can't really be done, they're like, no, we're doing it. We're using these tools like X, Y, and Z. And it's like, well, yeah, you have a team of 7 people for the similar exact type of or exact budget, $250 million turnaround, or $250 million mega project for commercial. There's different expectations. And so should we put together a team of 7 people just to manage schedule?
Well,
And
that's
there's,
a perfect. I love that analogy of oil and gas. I worked in Western Australia in the Pilbara for oil and gas and iron ore for around 2.5 years, and they treat P6 like the Bible. They go with it, and everyone understands it. Everyone knows it. No one has to be kind of sold on it. And I can see commercial construction. I don't think, obviously, the margins aren't big enough at the minute to invest a full scheduling team or a full cost management team. But I can definitely see the investment in scheduling, in pre-construction, and estimating, and having a project estimator on site doing the RFPs or whatever it may be, or keeping in control of the costs. I can see that happening. It's definitely happening in the bigger companies and the bigger projects, because obviously
yeah.
there's enough margin there to be able to absorb it. But I can definitely see the shift, and getting oil and gas people over there, surely that will only expedite it.
Yeah, and they've having these experts that have actually used the tool how it's intended has extremely helped, because, you know, and here's the problem, kind of like what you brought up. The larger companies that have these mega projects, these bigger projects, and have the budgets to spend on that type of stuff, yeah, that it's working for them.
Yeah.
But that's not the majority, not even close to the majority of how much work is out there. Like, and so when you go down to, well, what's really happening at these lower level companies, it's like what you're saying. It's the budget just isn't there for, you know, a certain size job. And so it's like, what do you do for these projects that don't have a good tool? And so we've been playing around with a lot of like the last planner type stuff, or TAKT planning and things like that, to try to alleviate, well, how do we still accomplish what you're able to accomplish? Because P6 does really good at data management, and it's a database, right?
Yeah.
And so when you take that, you know, 30,000 foot view, which you can do with P6, and even a whole enterprise of projects, which we do that now, thanks to these oil and gas folks that have come on to Oakland. And you can take that 30,000 foot view, that master plan type view, but then you can also dive down into the weeds with it and get down to that production level scheduling management.
Good.
And that's what we're trying to do with TAKT and these other things. Let's get an overall system, and then let's put something in the project team and the trade partner foreman. Let's put a tool in their hands that they can do that production type scheduling work, and that's the last planner system, or TAKT planning.
And I want to go. This is a perfect now transition from how you guys use P6 and TAKT, and you guys will use it together. It's not a case of TAKT has replaced P6, but you used it together. How does that work on a $40-50 million project? How does it go from start to finish? I mean, how do they speak to each other? Who uses it? The project manager, the operations, the pre-con, the estimating. How does that all go together?
So the first thing we do is TAKT.
Okay.
The reason why that is you actually model and you can see flow and sequence way better in TAKT than you can in P6. And to me, that's one of the main differences between TAKT and CPM.
Okay.
Is CPM is based on the calculation forward and back. Like everyone knows CPM and how it basically works. But TAKT, it approaches it from what is that beat and that rhythm and that flow of the project. And then you can see the cascade effect. And what they do is they put each area becomes its own little one piece flow or linear schedule of this happens, then that happens, then that happens. And then you have your basic crew flow or crew tie or whatever people call it in other places. That's what we call it. and you can just see it all on one page, or here's how this project flows. And so we start there, and we've even been awarded many projects, and owners come back and say, the reason why we're giving this to you is the TAKT plan. Like we like, after you spent 30-40 seconds teaching us like how to read this rainbow chart, we can see your plan.
Yeah.
It's not just this talk us through your P6 thing that you've given us.
Yeah.
And they don't really, right? There's a disconnect between owners actually understanding P6 and understanding P6.
So it's too high level, basically. It's too complex, it's too high level. It's like that, it's like that lecturer I had in college where he was just so smart, he could not communicate at our level. And it was just, everything just went over everyone's head. So TAKT, you're saying, is much more layman's terms. People can understand it better, but also functionally, it's really, really good for pre-construction, estimating, and then the operations team.
Yeah, because it models that flow. Flow is what we're looking for, right? And we want to get, things just working properly and not slow, not getting into that whiplash. That's how you model it. You can model it really well and actually a lot faster in TAKT. Yeah. When I was building proposals in P6 and spitting them out to the team, it would take me, depending on the size of project, anywhere from 8 hours to a couple of days worth of work just to put together a plan and get it all into P6, make sure it was all tied correctly, spit it out and get it to the team. Versus like I don't ever take, and I'm not taking into account reading the plans and all that stuff. Just once I'm done, like how long does that take? And now like a few hours and that's it. Like,
brilliant.
I don't think any TAKT plan should take me over 3 to 4 hours ever. And so it's more efficient to actually build the schedule and you can see it. And so we start there because it'll help owners start to see and visualize those things and start that communication. It's just way better there. Then back to your question before is how do you marry these two together? Well, TAKT is what we call our master plan, right? This is the overall schedule. This is what we want to achieve. This is the flow. Now, once we've gone through all the what ifs during the design phase, which we stick with TAKT usually as long as we can until the owner tells us in a contract, we need P6. Yeah. And then we say, okay, now we're going to build P6 based off what the TAKT plan says. And really, we just model exactly what TAKT is saying in P6. This is, this block represents 3 days or 4 days or 5 days. It's this activity. We legitimately make that activity in P6 with that duration, link it to the things that it's saying either by the area or the crew tie. And there you go. So really it feeds the decision-making into TAKT. And then we just model what TAKT is saying in P6 if it's required by the contract. Now we do have some projects that we're kind of stepping away from P6 a little. We still have a P6 file. We just have a higher level of it, like a level 2 we would call. And it's to help feed our company metric system because P6 does a really good job of being a database, right? Yeah. So if we have that high level master schedule in P6 that mirrors what the TAKT plan says, and we can update it monthly or less frequently, we can still roll that data up at the company level and say, okay, across all of our projects, here's where we're at. Brilliant. And give that view to our ownership, to the Oakland leadership team, so they can see, okay, here's what all our projects are doing. These ones are ahead of schedule. These ones are behind, so on and so forth. Whereas with TAKT, you can still do the same thing on a project where you have a master plan. And if you have a master plan, that's that high level, like we were talking about before. Having last planner system or another system for production planning, the low level in the detail weeds type thing that aligns with the TAKT plan. The TAKT plan setting those milestones and how do we start tracking, that day-to-day production and align it with the TAKT. That's what we've been doing in a lot of these other projects. We have a $80 million high-end hospital that we're building, and they have a TAKT plan up on the wall of the trailer, and they do the last planner system, pulling milestones off that TAKT plan, and they coordinate with the trades. Okay, this, how are we going to do that today? Who's going to be in what area? Talking about that day-to-day production up on the board. and it all aligns with what's happening on the TAKT plan.
Brilliant.
Now, they still have P6 because it's contracted, but this was kind of one of our tests where we pulled P6 back, and the team, the trade partners, and even the owner, we're not even really sharing that anymore. We kind of just slowly stopped sending it, and we just have these two tools. Now, we're still modeling everything that's happening in P6, but we don't share it with anyone. It's just kind of over here in the corner. We kind of put it in timeout, right? and it's crazy. Like, we're doing better because of it. So we're seeing that people being able to see the flow and see the master plan with a TAKT plan, they can envision it and they can see it a lot better. Then when we have the last planner system, we're going down to the weeds, just like they do in oil and gas with that huge team, and having a huge project controls mechanism. We put the controls back into the team on site, the foreman and the superintendent, where they're coming together and they're using the last planner system as that production level scheduling and planning tool. And they're just going because they're bought in because they help to create the plan. And it's super agile and lean because they can deal with the punches. If they know, okay, here's our overall target milestone from the TAKT plan, they then can track to it, and off you go, Bob's your uncle.
So let's take this $80 million hospital project. What's the method? Is it IPD, CM at risk?
It's
negotiate.
It's not an IPD. It's more it's a C. I don't think there might have been some design assist elements.
Cool.
Towards the beginning.
So at the very beginning, I'm taking this from an estimator pre-construction point of view. Do you build a TAKT plan and then help out the pre-construction and estimating team for bidding the project? Is that how early you get involved? And how does that dynamic work?
Yes. And it's hand in hand. Usually they're there first.
Yeah.
Because that's just always kind of been the case.
Yeah.
We've put into play some processes in pre-construction that we all work towards. Constructability reviews to look at, okay, do we have enough money set aside for this stuff? Do we have a good, logistics plan of how we're going to manage, materials when it comes on site, man material hoists and things like that? I know we have it accounted for, but where are we going to put it spatially? Let's make a map of how this all is going to work. And also the schedule is how we're doing this. Is that realistic? Is there estimator time for this? How is the overlaps between systems and phases and work and yada, yada. So we all are working towards that, even the estimators and everyone in pre-con. So we work hand in hand. And I'm getting phone calls from estimators. Hey, we need a TAKT plan. So we know, and obviously when you put bids out and solicit for work, one of the main things is putting a schedule out there so the trade partners know what we're up against. We're not expecting, double shifts and things like that. But if we are, that's where they would understand and see that, right?
Yeah.
What that effect would be and so on and so forth.
Because I'm thinking, I'm putting myself in the estimator position. I'm thinking if I've got a schedule, a TAKT plan that ultimately can save me money and give me a complete roadmap of where what's going to happen, that would enable me to do my job better and possibly become more competitive. But not only that, when I'm speaking to subcontractors and trying to solicit bids, surely if I've got a TAKT plan at hand, they're gonna be more comfortable coming and working on my $80 million hospital project than the competitor's $100 million office building down the street, because they know exactly what's happening, when it's happening, and how it's going to pan out.
Yes, but you do get some naysayers that it's like, there's this new thing, give me P6, right? It's like, well, and it's funny too, because most, like a very high majority of everybody really doesn't know how to read the thing, or, you know what I mean? Or what it really means, right? So they look at it and they're like, they're really just looking through this list of, 5,000 activities, looking for where's an activity that's mine. Boom, there's the first one. So they're expecting me to be on site that time. Okay. And what are my durations? 10 days there, 10 days. Oh yeah, that's not enough. Okay. Yeah. We need to pad this a little more. That's legitimately what they're doing, but they don't really see and understand how everyone else has correlated what we've really built in the logic, because as you print a P6 file or a schedule, you don't see the logic.
No.
Like it doesn't print that.
No. And we're all visual. We're all visual
Yes.
people, whether you like it or not. And anybody that tells you differently is probably a genius or too high level to explain why he's not visual, because we're all visual. If we don't have a plan or a map, or as you say, a TAKT plan, then it's very difficult to understand not only your own schedule and your own logistics, but everyone else and how everyone else ties into it.
I agree. And it at first, I'm really bought into TAKT, so that's why I keep going there. But really, I think you're right. However we can visualize the process, we should do that.
Yeah.
P6 and CPM has a really hard time, and the tool is really not meant to be visual.
Yeah.
That's not where they've spent their money. It's all in the data, which it's like if we want to understand at a corporate level, like how we're doing financially, we don't print like the registry of every single transaction and then stare at this mountain of paperwork and try to understand what we should do for the future. That's not what we do. We put it into spreadsheets, we put it into Excel, and then we try to find commonalities. We try to find trends. We try to, bake pie charts and bar charts and graphs and things that we can try to understand what the data is telling us.
Yeah.
So we see a lot of CPM folks that are trying to do the same thing. Well, let's do trend lines. Well, my problem with CPM trend lines is it depends on how you're managing the project, because you might just be managing it wrong and all you're seeing is your poor management. You're just seeing a trend of your poor management of the actual like tool, and not even like modeling what's like really happening on the construction site. Because if it's not really what the trade partners are actually planning and can do, which to get to that level, there's so many questions and so much collaboration that has to happen, that you'd have to go to that, 7-person team like we were talking about before. So it's not really good enough to take CPM and just dump it into Excel. Now, there are some add-ons that take an overall plan from P6 and graphically map it out. And you can do it like how linear schedules are done in civil. So there's these linear schedules that legitimately one of the axes, instead of being location, it's elevation.
Yeah.
And so if you need to dig down, legitimately the bar goes down.
Yeah.
But this way is time. So you're going elevation over time. And so that they have to do so much, thousands of miles of road. They would use these linear schedules to show, okay, this is where all the bellies are for drainage and all that stuff. Yeah. And so you can see that it's spatially this way, but then it's by time, and they need to go, across the whole desert or, wherever this road is going to be or whatever. And you can just see, it's like a map of the road over time as a schedule. And it's an interesting way. Once you start looking at those, it's like, oh, wow, that's weird. As you see those things, you're usually thinking in the bar chart or Gantt chart type thing, where it's like, it's activity over time, not space over time. And that's actually what TAKT plan does. It's a location-based scheduling process where you have a location over time, not an activity over time. So it changes the paradigm, because it helps you start to visualize space and time, which that's the battle. I believe you're 100% spot on. I forget what study it was, but it was 65% of the population are visual learners and visual communicators. And another 5 to 10%, something like that, are kinesthetic, hands-on type people.
Yeah.
And so legitimately, if you have a plan that you can see, touch, and feel and visualize, you're going to hit the majority of the population up in the 80%. But the other percentage are those, they learn from lectures, they hear from listening, they can visualize it in their mind. They don't have to visualize it outward. As they're hearing things, it just makes sense to them.
Yeah.
That's really what data folks are like. And that's not the majority though. we have these tools that are tailored to the minority of people, or a small number of people can actually think that way and process information that way, where the majority of people need something visual. So CPM alone, you can't just do that. You have to go above and beyond. And even any of these other, the oil and gas industry, they're pulling that information out and trying to visualize it in a way. And it just takes a lot of time and management and so on and so forth. So yeah, any way you can visualize the plan, that will help all stakeholders understand the process that needs to be followed and identify, hey, there's an issue here. We need to fix that. That doesn't work. Like you see this and this, that we can't do that.
Yeah.
But it's hard to see that in just a mountain of, line items, just like a cost spreadsheet of just every single transaction for the company. That's not helpful. How do you compile it in a way where you can see what the money is actually doing?
Yeah.
It's the same thing. How do you see what the time is actually doing on different facets and things?
And Spencer, that is the key to pre-construction technology. Whoever makes that piece of technology or that piece of kit is they're going to kill it, especially within commercial construction. If you think about the stakeholders, and we talk all the time on this podcast about the three-legged stool, you've got the client, the architect, and the contractor. There has to be a piece of tool, visually. I know 3 or 4 are trying to kind of crack that problem. But once that's cracked, and you give the owner administrative rights, you give the architect administrative rights, the data is shared, and who owns the data is probably the biggest problem, the biggest conundrum that we've got to sort out. But once that's cracked and everyone can see, they can touch, and they can click on and listen to or visually see what stage of the project is at, time-wise, cost-wise, and schedule-wise, then I think that's got to be the holy grail for us all, especially pre-construction.
I agree, and that the positive collaboration I see coming from IPD type projects, I think solves the issues of our past.
Yeah,
and what I mean by that is, when you said who owns the data, that's going to be a key thing there. And really the reason for that is the type of delivery system that we've been using in commercial construction actually pits us all against each other.
Yes,
it starts the blame game early.
Yeah,
it starts the blame game right out of the gates,
yeah,
based on how we handshake and say, this is what we're going to go do. We're not contracted to be teammates. We're contracted to hold each other accountable and point the finger if we need to point the finger. Right. So we point the finger and we say, well, this is the problem. The design is the problem. The the designer says, I'm not really getting any help from the contractor. The contractor's they're not communicating to me. And the owner's saying, you guys both suck. So
it becomes a schoolyard spat. That's what it becomes.
Yes.
And it always becomes. Yes. And then what happens then is, when you get blamed, you start reneging into yourself or going inward and keeping all the information that you should be sharing outwards. I think the contractor has to own the data. I think the design bid build, IPD, I think this is where it's going, and it's becoming more popular again. And they've got to own the data. They've got to work with the architect and then give the owner the data that they need. I'm not sure that that's right. I don't think anyone owns it. Right.
I think it's true. I think it transcends the team. And if the owner, the architect, and the contractor, the three-legged stool, like you referred it to, if that team was really a team, the data is just the facts of what's happening. Okay. And everyone brings different data or facts to the table, because what's happening at the design team level, they're producing value up front of understanding what the expectation is, what we need to build, and giving a roadmap so that we can achieve it. What is the contractor bringing? A roadmap of how that's achievable. They're bringing value on understanding how to build what the architect is saying. The owner is laying out, these are the expectations. If that is working properly, the transparency the transparency between all team members can go through the roof, right? we can trust each other at that point. Without trust, then it's like, well, no. I'm going to be the one that owns everything, right? It's all me. If we're equal partners, we all own it and we should all have a say.
Yes, but
you know what I mean?
I do absolutely know what you mean. And in an ideal world, I would love that, and I think that's the way it has to go. But then it becomes historical data, so everyone's allowed the data, and then it's how you use the historical data going forward. So then it becomes, yeah, I could see that work, but really, historical data is then the age. I mean, to me, historical data within pre-construction scheduling, planning, it doesn't matter. That gives each company the edge. There's companies that are doing it right and investing in it now, and they are going to be so far ahead of everyone else. It's incredible. And they're doing it proprietary. It's all in-house. So it's owning the data is the big question. I don't know whether that perfect world in the three-legged stool of everybody sharing the data and nobody owning it. I hope it does that. I'm not too sure, Spencer.
I agree that it's not there, and that would be the ideal state. And I agree that that owning that data, that dictates who is leading the charge 100%. Yeah. I agree with that, for sure.
Good.
So good. I think if we can get to that state of we've broken down the silos, that's what we have right now, is we have these little silos of who's right and who's wrong, and like you said, the schoolyard spat. and if we can break that down, that's going to improve our delivery of projects in pre-construction and being able to manage and see what we need to achieve up front, so that when it comes time to build, everything's answered and it will go smooth from there.
Yeah, and I think it's a cultural DNA thing within construction. It's old school.
Yes,
it's keep all the information, and we're like, people are not collaborative enough yet. And even within, I tell you what, people are very good at collaborating in BIM and VDC. These guys are on LinkedIn, they're on social media, they're talking about everyday issues, they're giving information to all their contractors. They're not worried about, I'm not giving him that information, he's a competitor of mine, he'll get the age. The age is the people. It's not the information. If the only way that we can build bigger, better, and safer buildings is through sharing and collaborating, and that's all through construction operations. But and we're getting that way. We are getting that way, especially pre-construction and estimating.
So I totally agree with you. My reason for wanting to do that, as far as my role and what I'm helping the construction industry do with my little corner of the world, right? I just see my same experience at the crane company happening to workers out on the job site because of lack of planning, because of these poor tools, because of these siloed, conversations in pre-con, because of all these issues. Families are being hurt. We have the highest rate of suicide out of any industry in construction. We have one of the highest alcoholism problems. We have one of the highest mortality rates. We have one of the highest injury rate. And it is dangerous what we do, but legitimately we have to change our approach if we want to change our outcome. Yeah. So the collaborating, the being willing to share, I'm so invested in that legitimately these side companies that we've started, Elevate Construction and Lean TAKT and some of these other companies, we're almost doing it as, hey, we want to give you these tools for absolutely free, because P6, if you think about it, it's an expensive tool. Yeah. And there's a lot of companies out there that are trying, to your point, are trying to crack the scheduling or data question. Yeah. And I mean, you're talking like P6 is almost becoming the least expensive out of all of them. Like, you're looking at some of these software systems, and it's like, this is like exponentially more expensive and more expensive and more expensive. And people are trying to crack the code and earn money along the way. Honestly, like with TAKT planning, I can do the same thing that you can do with P6. Like, we've done it. We have it on every project now at Oakland. And legitimately, we're more successful when we just use TAKT. So it's like, I'd rather share that.
Yeah.
We're blasting it out on social media and sharing it on YouTube and doing a lot of things so people can see like how we're doing it, and maybe take that and take it a step further, whatever. It's like, we're not wanting like money from it. Here's our Excel template. Go have fun. Like,
it's open source.
It's the
like
right thing for families in the industry. It's the right thing for workers. And if we really do respect our trade partners and even the architects and owners, and even architects, if we're going to respect that, no, but we would use tools that would help everyone understand and track to the plan. And so we're sharing that stuff for free, and that's why we believe a lot of the different things in some of the TAKT community. There's this software called TAKTing, right? TAKT.ing. And they're at the forefront. Their tool is the best tool besides doing it in Excel. Mm-hmm. And legitimately, their tool is for free. Wow. You can just get on their website, sign up, and they'll give you a license absolutely for free. They'll never charge you for it. Now, they have stuff above and beyond if you want to connect to Power BI, if you want to, do a lot of the bells and whistles. But we legitimately are managing projects with their free software as well. And I just think it's more important than money and trying to gain a profit. Like, we really just need to change the industry, because we have so many issues, and we've been lagging behind other industries and sectors in way too many important areas, like worrying about work-life balance and having that open communication. It's just time to break down the silos, be done with it, and just start improving.
And listen, technology is going to be a huge part of that work-life balance. The capacity deficit that we have right now, the hospitals we have to build, the schools, the roads, it's going to be impossible to do it with the current workforce and the lack of technology. We need the technology to accelerate us getting to that capacity, and then good people then will be the differentiator between each GC, and that's the way it should be, building relationships. Spencer, we could talk all day about this, but I have to say thank you for what you're doing as well. Keep talking about it, sharing, learning. I love your stuff, and I'm looking forward to following you over the next 2 or 3 years.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. It's been a pleasure, and on we go.